Hey guys, welcome back to Foresight Paradigm. It has been a while, but we are back now. I am here with my first guest in a while, Landon Taylor. I'm kind of feeling like my name is not as distinct as I thought. Also Landon. But yeah, also AKA Tombstone Da Deadman. He's a rap artist, and I believe he does some comic book graphic.
Yeah. Just started a comic book company. Yep.
Oh, excellent. Very, very cool. So, Tombstone, I first heard your music, I think back in 2013 or 14, and I really liked it. Around the same time as, absolutely. It's good. It's good. With Great and Square. And I think Grand Unified Theory, all of them, are they still going? Or
yes, Grand Unified is still active. You'll most of the time you see most of the activity is on Discord, but yeah, it's still active.
So they're still producing music and all that.
Yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Graydon is supposed to be dropping another project soon. So
excellent. Looking forward to that. Yeah, it seemed like every song he did was good, definitely, and had it was extremely complex. You know, you could keep listening to it.
That's definitely
yeah, it's like a lyrical goldmine. You keep coming back to it and hearing things that you didn't hear.
You'll hear different things you didn't hear before, right?
Exactly. I think he came with the metaphors, all the time. And so I really love music like that, where you have different levels, right? That can enrich things, and you have the music that maybe can move your head or your body, and then but you have the lyrical that can move your mind also. So I really appreciate that. All right, well, if you can, Tombstone, how do you prefer to be addressed? Tombstone, Mr. Taylor.
Nah, okay, Tombstone's fine. Mr. Taylor was my grandfather. So
okay, yeah. All right, Tombstone. How did you first off, how did you get to the position that you are now in regards to religion, and all of that? How'd you
so like the vast majority of people in the United States, I was raised up in a religion.
Right.
My family was Pentecostal. So, as a kid, you're not really questioning, but so much.
Right.
They tell you these things and you accept them because the people that are telling you that are the people you trust more than anybody else in the world. They're your parents, grandparents, family members, whatever. As I started getting older, though, certain things they would say did not make sense from what I observed of the world. And granted, I was young, but even young, you observe certain things that go, wait a minute, that doesn't happen. That can't happen. Right. But I think the thing that really kind of set me down that path of questioning was, as a kid, trying to come up with an adequate solution to Jesus is God, but he's also God's son, but how does that work? That thing drove me crazy. I remember as a kid contemplating, how does that work? Like how is he his own son, and his son is his own? How does that work? And I never got an adequate question, an answer to that question from anybody, because there is none. Like there is none.
Right. Yeah, God sacrificed himself to save us from himself. Yeah, how does that work exactly, and why is it necessary?
I mean, listen, as a work of fiction, sure, but if this is a truth claim, if this is a claim on reality, like there's no reference for that, and how anybody could make that claim as a truth claim, it just seemed wild to me. So I would ask these questions, and what I got from most of the adults after a while, I guess because when you don't have answers and some kid is asking you these questions about this stuff, but you don't want to, you're suffering from some sort of cognitive dissonance, right? Because these questions are valid and you don't have good answers for it. I was eventually told I wasn't supposed to question some of this stuff. right?
Right.
And that was a cool answer for a little while, but you grow older and your cognitive faculties start to improve. Like, no, that's actually not. So then there was a whole bunch of history stuff. So I'm a Black American, right? The older I got, the more history I started learning about how Christianity was used, basically weaponized against Black people. Literally, the slave masters were teaching these folks this stuff, and there were certain concepts in there that would keep them from rebelling against punishment. Like, there's a quote in the Bible: the slaves have supposed to obey their masters. They was using stuff like this, and I said, well,
There's more than one.
It's more than one. And so they're using stuff like this to create a narrative, because you got to think about how this stuff works. They snatched you from where you were from, and then generations passed. So the original people who understood and knew their culture, they died off. What's left are the offspring, which they sold in the different plantations and all of this other stuff. What was their head being filled with? Because they didn't have knowledge of anything of where they came from. So of course it was getting filled with this stuff. And it's like, this was, to me, it was like the hijacking of the mind, right? So like I said, as I got older, that stuff just didn't work with me anymore. But I was not ready to not be religious. I just did not buy into Christianity anymore. And because there was other religious dogmas that addressed the historic thing to at least at that point, to my satisfaction, I veered over there. And I was a Muslim for a lot of years. But
really?
But the same thing happened.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, for a lot of
years. How did you figure out for yourself at that point? Like, okay, Christianity, not true, but Islam is. They got it right. How did you get to that point?
Because basically, this is what typically happens, and this is with a lot of these different sets of Islam that were created here in the United States. So at least when it came to dealings with my community, I can't speak how they sell their stuff to other communities. They take that history, that very poisonous history, relationship between Christianity and African Americans. They take that, and people who are aware of that history and see the conflict, like, why am I worshiping the same God that the people who enslaved my family worship? That's crazy. And they take that and they utilize it and they wrap it into, that before they brought a lot of us over here, a lot of us were Islamic. So a lot of us looking for that connection back that we feel was ripped from us to a cultural heritage, go, oh, okay, so let me go and see what this is about. And when they cloak it in that, it becomes still, once again, less about it being logical and more about it being an emotional thing, right? So, but again, the same thing wound up happening, because it was certain things the imams and stuff would tell me, certain things I would read in any of the books of the Sahaba, the Hadith, and all certain things I've been reading that stuff and go.
So at a certain point, you found their arguments more convincing than you previously had the Christians.
Yes, absolutely.
Even though they were still just assertions and they could not. Demonstrate.
That's it. And once certain things were, I'm trying to find a specific one. This one specifically. So when you're doing the pilgrimage, right? One of the rituals you do in the pilgrimage is you stone the devil. So there's an actual stone pillar in Mecca where they get up and they stone the devil. So my question was, wait a minute, does the devil feel that? Like when you when you hit the pillar with the rock, does the devil feel that?
Mm-hmm.
No, because it's just a goddamn rock. It's not anything. It's just a rock. That's all it is. And then it was other things, like they said that on the night of power, the Prophet Muhammad rose through the heavens on the back of a barak, which is a creature with the body of a mule and the head of a man. Nah, man. Like no. And like I said, right around that time, as I started getting like actually more interested in scientific explanations for things, and one of the things that really kind of pushed me away from all of that is the moment I start asking these questions, like when I start asking the questions about who Allah actually was, because many sects will tell you, oh, Allah is the same deity that's in the Torah and all of those different books from the Judahites. And I went, that's not what history says. History says that the pagan Arabs worshiped 300 plus gods, and Allah was just one of those gods. And when you start literally in the museum in France, the Louvre, there is a statue there of Allah with a crescent moon carved in his chest. And I thought, so putting stuff together, like, wait a minute. So Allah was the moon god. And this is why in most Islamic denomination stuff, you see the crescent moon is used very frequently. And he was the moon god. And he had a wife a lot and daughters. And this is none of the stuff y'all saying now, you know, when you go to teach your religion to people. So it's like I'm finding all these I don't know, like contradictions. And there's a real history right here. So I'm saying, I'm gonna look at the history, or I'm gonna look at what you're telling me now. Because there's evidence to support what they're saying. There's no evidence to support what you're saying. Oh, that's right. It's faith-based. And then I realized it took a little while, but I realized that some of the things people accept, some of the claims made by religion that people will choose to accept, they would not use that exact same methodology for anything else in life. They specifically compartmentalize religion and will allow the craziest claims to be made without questioning it. If somebody told me that it was raining elephants, I would not accept that on face value. I would not accept that. I would go, wait a minute, where? How come I'm not hearing my ceiling collapse? Like, but yet they'll tell them all of these things about a snake talked and Muhammad on the body of a mule, and they don't use that. No one else could tell them that. No one else in modern times can walk up to them, a stranger from the street, and come up with some kind of fanciful tale, and they would accept it. But when it comes to religion, they compartmentalize it that way. So I said, well, I'm going to start looking at religion the same way I look at everything else. Religious claims the same way I look at everything else. If it's incredulous, strange credulity, like, what do you want from me?
Yeah, that's similar to me. History definitely played a part for me. I'm kind of a big history buff. Yeah, but it's amazing when you think about it. There are so many things, not just wrong with the God hypothesis, but wrong with all the religions. And you could you could keep talking about it for days. And I'm myself, many years later, still discovering some. Like, I didn't think about this before. I mean, wow, that doesn't make sense either.
Right.
It's
at a certain point, and I know this is with me, I've grown as a person, because when I first started doing YouTube videos about it, it was because it was a way to vent. It was basically a way to vent. Right. I had no idea that the channel would have got that attention. None of that. It was just a way to talk about stuff that I had another channel. I didn't want to talk about that stuff on that channel, so I created the Rational Warrior channel to specifically talk about my feelings about that stuff. And a lot of the stuff I was still working through. But I knew for a fact that I no longer accepted the methodology that they use to decide what's true and what's not, because the scientific method yields results and this other thing doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. I mean, just look around. Is all you got to tell somebody. Look around. The whole world around you is based off of the efficacy of science.
Yeah, I've made that point numerous times. Like, you literally, when you go to bed at night, the fibers in your blanket, like all of that stuff, when you hit a switch on the light, when you turn your car, like literally, it's all around you. All around you.
That's simple.
Like that, to me, shows how potent the scientific method was over this faith-based method.
And
And
what can you not believe on faith, right? With just
right,
faith, you can believe
you
anything.
can believe anything.
Yeah.
And this is what causes the conflict. But like I said, at that time, I was wanting to have those discussions, and
Right.
they were very. It was very informative to me, because if I could just show you my inbox through those years, where religious people would get in my inbox on YouTube and read me the Riot Act and leave these long paragraphs. I can give you an example of one. I was telling my daughter the other day. This one guy, he messages me and he says, he really disapproved of the stuff that I was doing, thought I was doing a disservice for people that may be struggling with their faith, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, let me ask you a question. How do you know that any of that stuff is true? He said, because God speaks to him. I said, that's interesting. So when God speaks to you, he gives you information about history and science and all that stuff too? Or is it just about the dogma or the doctrine that you're into? Well, God is the ultimate source of not all knowledge. And he said all knowledge. I said, cool. And he speaks to you, because I was religious a lot of years. Nothing ever spoke to me. So let me ask you this. If this is a resource that you have, because surely this thing must know everything, right? You say he created everything, everybody. Ask him, what's my father's name? He hummed and he hawed. He had all these little excuses, but finally he tried to offer something. He said, I'm picking up something like Leroy. I said, really? You see a black guy and you think, father's name's Leroy. No. Now, that is a simple request from your all-powerful deity. Simple. And you was wrong and you got no answer. So ask yourself, all those other many questions, things that you think you know because you think a deity spoke to you, how many of those were wrong? And how come that method isn't consistent? Well, actually, it is consistently wrong. It's consistently wrong, right? So those type of experiences, those conversations I've had, and to be fair, I've also had conversations with very thoughtful religious people who are willing to entertain a conversation, an actual conversation. And I don't know how it changed them later on in life. I can't speak to that. I do know that in the process of these conversations, there were things that were being contemplated that I'm fairly certain they had not contemplated before. So it's not that all of them are super unreasonable, but I think a lot of times where we mess up is we discount the emotional attachment to that. Humans are emotional creatures. And a lot of the times, some of the conversations I had with people, I started to realize you're not defending your deity. You're defending your grandma. Because when you think of Jesus and all of that, you think of grandma in the kitchen, singing them gospel songs, making the pie, blah, blah, blah. How could grandma been wrong? Once I realized that a lot of it is just an emotional attachment, and I thought about myself, I did have an emotional attachment to the idea that there had to be something, whatever, out there.
Right.
A lot of these people have the same thing, and they're not necessarily like yes, verbally in that conversation, they're trying to defend their religion, but a lot of the times they're really defending their grandma, their mama, their auntie, the people that they loved that believed in that and got them to believe they wasn't lying to me. Not on purpose. They probably believed it too, right? But it's still not true.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, how did you get into recording music? Getting to specifically, anti-religious music. How did you find those people? How did that happen?
Okay, so that's funny because I want to say well over a decade before I released any atheist music on before there was a YouTube platform, basically. I had a anti-religious song. I was part of a group called the Villains, and we did a song that was pretty much questioning all of that stuff back then. That's the only material that I had on that topic. I rapped about a lot of things. I've rapped for over 40 years. I rapped about a lot of things.
Right.
And I did not continue on. That was just that one song about that one topic. Move on to something else. When I started the YouTube channel, there was another YouTuber that put out a challenge, and that was really popular back then on YouTube back then. The YouTube culture has changed a lot over the years. That was really popular back then for people to put out a challenge. And the challenge was, show us some talent that you have. I rap, right? So since that channel theme was about having those discussions about religion and all that stuff, I did a song about it.
Right.
And a lot of people liked it, which, don't get me wrong, like there was a period of time years before locally when I had a local following for music, but that was a long time before that. I put out that first song, and it got some attention. So I said, okay, cool. Start putting out a little bit more music. And then when I put out Beyond Reason, the YouTuber Dark Matter 2525, shout out to him. He heard the song.
I've seen his cartoons.
Right. He heard the song, and he was doing a video to support a friend of his that was a teacher that was getting basically persecuted at his school. And he put out a video in defense of that teacher, and he used the song Beyond Reason in the backdrop. And that got a bunch of attention coming to the channel. So, you know how YouTube is. You find something that works, you keep doing it, right? So I put out some more music, and somebody shared. So you remember the I don't know if you still watch it, the Atheist Experience on YouTube?
Not as much, but yeah, I catch it every now and then.
Back then, I think it was at the peak of its popularity, and it was a certain episode where Matt had a caller.
It was at the peak of its popularity back then.
I think so.
I think it's kind of kept going. I mean, it's
so you see, I wouldn't know because I haven't paid attention to it in a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like
they got a whole network now. They got a whole network. They got many shows kind of like tied to that.
Oh, okay, that's dope. That's dope. I did not know that. I got to meet Matt too when I performed in Texas a few years ago. But so there was a exchange he had with a caller, and I mean, you know how Mac does. He'll let you hang. He get enough rope to hang yourself. He'll ask you questions, and basically, he read the guy the Riot Act on there. So I sampled a portion of that exchange, and I put that at the beginning of a song I wrote called Poison. Somebody let them hear it, and they used it as the intro for one of the next episode. And not only did he use it as an intro, he talked about the song, he shouted out the channel, he did all of that, and that's deluge of people came in after that.
How'd you feel about that? Like that sudden like exposure, I guess.
Yeah, listen, it doesn't take a lot. If someone that's sharing your music already has a following, and provided that what you produced there was a demand for it, and there was clearly at that time a certain conversation was being had nationally in this country, and I don't believe it's anywhere near as fervent as it was back then, but it was big back then, that conversation, and there wasn't a lot of artists that were really like covering that in their music, especially not in hip hop. So I think that kind of made what I was doing somewhat unique. I occupied a certain space. And mind you, at this time, I had not heard of Graydon Square. I had never heard of Graydon Square before. And basically, our fan base overlapped. So his fans became fans of music that I did. And they said, hey, have you ever heard of Graydon Square? And I went, no, share some of his music. The first song I heard of his was Stockholm Syndrome. And I was like, whoa. So just so happens my fans was doing the same thing to him. So he came over, he heard, I think the first song he heard of mine was Anti-Science, I think. And he messaged me like, yo, that's a dope song. I appreciate it. So you start getting fans saying, y'all should collab. But see, I'm not a big collaborator in that space. It's just not something that I've ever, since I started recording music, it's not something that I've ever been that much into because I don't like depending on other people. And in those situations, it does come down to you got to check, see the person's verse is right. Is it ready when I need it to be ready? I'd just rather go and finish the whole damn song. So, and I figured I didn't know Graydon at that time. So he's probably busy. I'm busy. Is what it is. Right. And then one day he friend requested me on Facebook. And then he messaged, left a message on my wall saying, yo, we got to talk. And that's how that relationship started. From off of that.
What song did you guys do together? I don't remember.
There's a song on my first album. Okay. It's the only song that I didn't produce the beat. And
so you produce all your beats?
No, only that's a long story. So I had a producer at one point, one of my best friends in the world. And he's the one that kind of really transitioned me into the recording part of making music, because I come from a time where we was just rapping on street corners or on people's porches, or there might be a little event, a show they was having at the school, a talent show, and you go up there and you do that. I come from that time, right? I wasn't recording anything, and back then recording equipment was expensive as hell. Right? You couldn't just all the stuff that I'm able to do now, you couldn't do that back then. This is like the 80s, the mid 80s. Like you couldn't do all that as an indie musician. That wasn't gonna work.
Yeah, you go way back.
Yeah, you feel me?
That's like the very beginnings of hip hop.
Yeah,
in general,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Like I've been messing with this stuff for a long time, right?
Hey, you weren't lying.
Yeah. So he my producer, he quit. He didn't want to do music anymore for whatever reason. I don't know. So I had to ask myself, do you still want to do this? And once I came to the decision that yes, I did still want to do it, I said, well, I guess you're gonna have to learn how to use that equipment and make music for yourself. So I went on that journey of trying to learn how to use equipment. I purchased some of the cheapest equipment I could find that could get the job done, right? And got a bunch of books on it. And I still was I'm still learning even now. Like I've gotten way better, but it's always something new, always some new software, always some new hardware, always a different take on how to do all of this stuff. But I started producing my own music, and then I started producing for others. And it just so happens that when I dropped the first album, Rise of the Infidel, when I dropped that first album, I produced all of the tracks on there but one, and that's the one me and Graydon did together. I actually purchased that track from somebody else. So after that album, though, I didn't produce anymore because I found people who do it way better than me, right? And on top of that, I really wanted to focus on songwriting, that aspect of songwriting. And it was a lot easier to get people who were already much better than me in that space of producing to do all of that stuff. I hear it, like it, and write something to it and purchase it from them, right? That was a lot better for me. So yeah, it's been a lot of years since I've produced. I think the last track I produced for the artist Adequate on one of his albums. That was the Erp Derp song. But he was basically talking about these anti-science idiots with some of the things they say and how they react when they actually get approached with facts. Right? That's the last track I produced for somebody.
Yeah, definitely. I was wondering, was there like one going back kind of to our first conversation? Is there like one thing that you think it was most impactful and getting you to completely reject, the idea, the God hypothesis, and in general.
Yeah, I think the similarity in with the people in the Christian faith and their opposition to being questioned, like that the Muslims had. That to me was a common denominator. It was like, wow, so you really not better than than them, right? Right? You're really not.
Right.
You're not good at this either. Right? You're not good at this either. I think that did it for me. And then I started doing a lot of studying on those ancient cultures and where a
Yeah.
lot of those religious ideas, where they come from. I started reading a lot of Sumerian stuff. And I started looking at, oh, okay, you put two and two together. You see that, okay, so Abraham, if he existed, lived in the Ur of Chaldea. Ur of Chaldea was a province in Babylon. Babylon and Samaria had very similar ideologies. They traded things back and forth, blah, 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 as far as gods. Oh, his god name is El. Oh, there's a El in the Sumerian pantheon. Interesting. And he was the head of the pantheon. Interesting. And this is the same area. Interesting. And then I started read about Utnapishtim, and in the flood.
Yeah, the flood.
The story written thousands and thousands of years before the Jewish people got their hands on it, right? And I started seeing like, you just put two and two together. And I remember me and two of my brothers, we used to spend a lot of time on the third floor of Enoch Pratt Library, the main branch in Baltimore. On that third floor, the Department of Humanities, digging in those books.
Before the internet.
Yeah, before the internet. Digging in those books. Digging in them. And we started seeing connections from these old ancient myth and how they evolved when they got transposed to other people, either through trade, through war, whatever. These concepts, they spread around that area. Which, by the way, is not even a big area. It's not even that big.
To take 40 years to get through the desert, yeah.
Yeah, right, right. Just go to your Google Maps,
right,
and go to that same area and see if it takes 40 years to go. It doesn't.
Well, let me ask you, how big of a thing was science for you, and just the fact that most of the people that tend to be most connected with the way the world works are not believers, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have alternate explanations that actually are substantiated by, good
evidence
and, a plethora of evidence, corroborating evidence across fields. How big of a deal was that for you?
It's a big deal because even with the history of that, you can see the transition in thought. So yes, there was a time when a lot of scientists were religious. There was a time.
You go back, yeah.
You go back. And a lot of times now, one of the main arguments, one of the main things they toss out at you was that, well, this scientist from back then, he was religious. Well, this scientist, but if you look at the transition, it's not about that one era of time. Look at the steps. As time went forward, less and less scientists were religious. And as a coincidence, I don't think this is a coincidence that as time went on, our tools of observation improved. We started seeing things like, okay, now we have the tools to see that isn't what we thought it was. That's what we thought it was at first. That's not that now, So I think that transition from there being a time when there were scientists who were believers to a time now where upper 90% percentile is not, that's impactful because they're dealing with evidence, accumulated evidence, and analyzing it and experimentation. They're dealing with data. And that's something that the average person does not truthfully deal with on a regular basis. Like people are busy with their lives. They go to work. They don't have these conversations. So I always find it's a little irritating when I see people make an attempt to make some sort of a equivalency between their ignorance and knowledge that's from people that spent their life studying this, and you spent maybe 5 minutes on Google?
Right. Yeah.
That's insulting. That's
And
insulting.
that doesn't mean you should, be fallacious and just, do the appeal to authority.
Absolutely not.
But you should recognize and appreciate expertise and why they're
Give
experts.
somebody the benefit of their expertise. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not going to go to, if I don't know how to fix my computer at all, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. Right. I'm going to somebody who this is what they work with. I mean, to me, this is, and I don't like making appeals to common sense either, because we know that's cultural. The common sense is cultural. But come on, if the person is working on this their entire life and you haven't even thought about it up until this moment, who do you think has more accumulated knowledge about this? You or them? You should at least be hearing them out. And then to dismiss it outright is the craziest thing ever. It's crazy.
Yeah. I remember a time back years ago when I thought I was deep, and I was intellectual, and I guess I was on certain things, but on religion, to me, it was this thing that was like, this kind of means somebody's moral, or they really are serious about things.
Right.
Even though if I could maybe see some problems with religion, I couldn't see it as it's fundamentally problematic itself.
Yes.
Right. Yes. It was just simply because I had never really studied it. I just simply never really studied it. Right. It was kind of there, like culture, like air, and I never really looked it in the face very much.
Yeah.
I think that's how it is for a lot of people.
You don't notice it because you're submerged in it. And again, there are societal rewards for believing that stuff. There are societal rewards. You're rewarded by your family members that they believe in it. So you believe in it. You get paid. He's a good God-fearing boy. Even
how did your family react, by the way, to conversion?
That's funny.
I think that is not good.
They reacted to it. They reacted to it the same way they reacted to me converting over to Islam. It was literally the same energy. It was the same energy. But I was already used to it by then, though. I already went through that with the whole Islam thing. Now, to my mom's credit, she never gave me a hard way to go about any of that stuff. The conversion to Islam, nope. The conversion out of Islam, nope. As a matter of fact, my mom took it upon herself to read every book I brought in her house. If I brought that in there, let me see this. When I brought in A Message to the Black Man by Elijah Muhammad, my mom read that. Like, what is he reading? Because she wanted to know what her kid was consuming.
I remember when
gave me a hard way to go.
I remember when I started first being blown away by discovering all the problems with religion. I would just share stuff with people, including my mom. She was like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want, so. I mean, props to your mom. I mean, because she, being like that.
She never gave me, she never gave me a hard way to go with that. But some of the other family members, though, that's something else. And, to this day, while I don't think that's entirely the reason, it's just that my particular personality, I'm a certain type of way, and I don't do well in big groups. It's not what I do. But I have a huge family, and they love to get together. I am just not what they are, right, in the sense of personality, interest. Love them to death, but that's not me. So
I can empathize.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's
your family, you don't choose who you're related to by blood, but you can choose who you actively make your family, basically.
Yeah.
And that kind of means
pretty
more.
much what I did. I think it does mean more because you have more of a say in that. Like, you're making decisions based off of that. And like I said, I love them to death, but I don't spend a whole bunch of time to this day around them. And I'm fairly certain that some of the reason for that is the divide on that conversation, even though it's not, to be completely honest with you, it's not a conversation I even have much now, because most of the people around me now don't really give a shit about it. And the one that does, he's not your typical, like he's evidence-based. He still has his faith in this, but when it comes the way he dissects certain claims of everything outside of that is pretty close to what we do with religion. So because of that, he
Yeah.
doesn't bug or trip off of my positions or take on any of that stuff. And I don't bother him about his because I relate to him on other things, you know.
Right.
The other people that are in my life that are religious and do believe in that stuff, again, you know, there's variations amongst believers. So you have the diehards, go to church every Wednesday and Sunday. If they Muslim, they go to El Juma on Friday and they even go to newcomers class on Sunday, right? And then you have the people that's not quite as extreme. They believe in it. Maybe they did all that stuff when they was a kid, but as they got older, they believe in the concept, but they don't actually participate. And then you have people that have just general belief in some higher power, right? Most of my friends now kind of are in that lane, so I don't have to argue with them about public policy, about using religion. I don't have to argue with them about that because they wouldn't agree with that either, right? But they just have this general whatever, and we don't relate on that. Like my whole existence and time I spend with them is not me trying to deconvert them. Like that's not. We make music, we do podcasts, like all that other stuff. We talk about comic books, comic book movies. That's
Absolutely.
not something, you know.
Yeah. I mean, for myself, like I realized a long time ago, I don't want to be defined by my non-belief in deities. I don't. I think I'll speak up on it. I think there's a time and place for it.
Yes.
It's important, but especially in matters you were just referring to. But yeah, I don't want to be defined by it, you know? And frankly,
it's funny you say that too. It's funny that you say that because it's one of the things I struggle with. I made one atheist album. One.
Yeah.
40 years of doing music. I currently have 9 projects in my discography. One atheist album. And I'm forever labeled the atheist rapper. It's funny how that works.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about one more thing scientifically. Yeah, the question of why is there something rather than nothing, or along those lines. To me, it seems to me you might just have to get to a blunt fact, at some point. Either the universe always existed, or because really God is just shifting it. All you're doing is shifting it. Why? Where did God come from? Who or what made God? Did God always exist? If he didn't, where did he come from? Et cetera, et cetera. And scientists will tell you, the universe does not need any help to exist. People think the Big Bang, what caused it? Well, the Big Bang doesn't even say that the universe began there. No,
it doesn't.
Theories like various multiverse theories based on real theories that lead to that. It's not made up
on a lot of math.
Yeah, right.
I think if I can kind of predict where you're going with that, the impact of that to me is, first I always ask them, well, explain to me what is a state of nothingness, because a lot of quantum physicists says that doesn't exist.
Yeah, we don't even know that the pure nothing could exist.
Exactly. So when they say something from nothing, what is nothing?
Yeah,
what is that? What is that? Because people that think long and hard about this and do the math and look at all the evidence and data they got, a lot of them are saying, is there really a state of nothingness? Is there really? And if there's not, then for all we know, this could just be one iteration of this sort of reality. This could be silicone. We could be doing this over and over. It literally could be bang, crunch, bang, crunch, bang.
We don't know.
We don't know. We don't know. And the odds are a lot of us living now might never know.
Yeah. Well, there might be, you go to, with the Hugh Everett many interpretations of quantum physics. Yeah. It could be many of us.
It could be many of us.
That could replace a bit of your consolation from religion, with thinking, oh, maybe I didn't do something in this life, right? Maybe there's another me. Yeah, maybe.
Listen, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. There is the argument that our common sense, evolved it kind of, as Richard Dawkins put it, in Middle Earth, to comprehend things we need to deal with to survive. So, on the
Exactly.
quantum level, we don't intuitively grasp that things that are very fast, all that.
Quantum weirdness.
Right.
We can't apply our experiences in this form, because one, we're pretty much slave to our senses, which can be fooled very easily. So it's like a lot of the observations that we make without certain tools to be able to make those observations are probably going to be wrong. Like if you see a lightning bolt coming and you think that Thor did it, you're probably wrong. And then when humans finally got the tools to be able to detect that and see what that was, they was, oh, so it's not some red-headed guy up there with a hammer doing that. No.
Yeah. And it's just so transparent. The ancient religious writers, they did not know how things work.
They knew nothing. They do nothing.
Some of the facts of reality we couldn't imagine,
That's what bothers me the most is like, so those guys from back then, I don't blame them. They were men of their time. They were men of their time. I do, however, get a little annoyed when people keep referencing them. They've long since gone. If somehow you could have, if the Thanos' time stone was real, and you could go back, you wouldn't even recognize these guys. You can't question them about what they wrote, why they wrote it that way, who was bothering them, what was going on at the time. None of this. And we clearly have people working in these fields for their entire lives to try to figure some of the stuff out that's alive now that we can question. We can actually question. They come out with some journal. Interesting.
People could say, there are things out there that we don't know everything. So maybe, how do you not know there's not some God? How do you define God? Right? I mean, if we're talking about something that's so obviously anthropomorphic, and that's an anthropomorphic projection of some kind, and that we say it interacts in the world, and it's like a person, and it's done these specific things on so many levels. Yeah, we can talk about that, and we can come to very
we can talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I am open. I had this conversation with Graydon when we were organizing something for the comic book. And I said it's a certain amount of freedom not having a dogma, because I can entertain a hypothesis without accepting it as true. I am open to have that conversation about some type 3, type 4 civilization that did whatever. I am open. Let's talk about it. But if you don't have evidence, at the end of the day, it's just an interesting conversation. It's a thought experiment at the end of the day.
I think it was Aristotle in one of his better moments. He called that the mark of an educated mind, right? Being able to entertain ideas without accepting them.
Yeah. It's listen. I'm also open to if the facts sway me, they sway me. So let's say 20 years from now, there's some nail in the coffin evidence for any of the thousands of deities, or let's take it outside the realm of deities. A lot of what they consider now these wild hypotheses about how the universe came to be. If the evidence is there, I'm willing to accept it. I'm willing to accept it. That's the difference, I think, with well, to be clear, I don't want to impugn a lot of religious folks with it, because I see people that call themselves atheists do the exact same shit. I see them do the exact same shit. I've seen them do like, you don't believe it, you use your skepticism and your critical thinking to dissect concepts and claims about deities. But I don't see you using that for anything else. You are compartmentalized to that. And I've seen the exact opposite with a lot of religious people, where in everything else they deal with in life, they are perfectly logical. They can figure out a cause, an effect, and all of this. But when it comes to that one conversation, can't do it. Can't do it.
In my experience, the atheist community is pretty well educated, and they're pretty great people in general. But I mean, I don't doubt that there's people
Oh,
like
I've had conversations, wild, like I've literally seen them using a logical fallacy to support something outside of religious thing that they know they would not accept if a religious person used that to support their claim. And it's like, that's why I wrote a song called forgive my memory. It's one of the more popular ones where I basically broke down being a skeptic is so much more than just being an atheist. Don't stop. Don't let the skepticism stop with your conversation about religion. Don't let the critical thinking stop with that. There's a bunch of claims out here being made by politicians, by friends of yours, right? Yeah. By celebrities, institutions. There's a bunch of claims out here being made that it would definitely benefit you to utilize that skepticism and that critical thought to examine those claims too, because people don't just lie or are untruthful about religion.
Yeah, I mean, I call my channel Foresight Paradigm, right? Because the way I put it, I want to think and see as clearly as possible using the best tools that we have. And that includes, you know, empirically, logically, just the best things we have, how we found things out, right?
Yeah. And even with that, there's limitations there. Acknowledging the limitations of anything that humans could create, any method can create, it's still the best method we have. It's still the best method we have.
So what has religion done? What has religion discovered? What has it advanced? How has it moved in millennia?
And that's the other thing I don't like. I don't like when we're having that conversation and they'll say, well, if it wasn't for religion, this particular scientist wouldn't have scienced. No, that's not how that works. The religious thing was a cultural phenomenon. He was raised in that cultural phenomenon.
Everybody, and they would have got killed if they.
Yes, they literally would. They killed people. They put people in towers. You know, a lot of people up in towers for that sort of thing. So they wasn't.
It's like, dude, don't you know that up until like 200 years ago, maybe in the Enlightenment era, more or less, people got killed.
Yeah,
you know, you were dead.
Yeah, they were literally killing women for being witches.
Right.
This is a few hundred years ago. So, and in some parts of the world, they're still doing that.
Yeah.
So
by the way,
you know.
By the way, I used to do music. I did some rap myself, some kind of little bit of atheistic.
Interesting.
And, yeah. I'd love to share one particular track with you. It's pretty short. Get your thoughts on it.
Absolutely.
I kind of use it for my channel trailer now that I'm getting back into things, and I think it fits pretty well. But yeah, I'd love to get your input on
awesome
how you think it goes.
Absolutely.
I would like to check out one of your songs. I think it's the most popular, Ballad of the Non-Believer.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Let me pull that up. You can kind of let me know the what you think about this now, what you thought about it then, where'd it come from. Let's see. All right.
Did you really think that I wasn't gonna address this album? Don't be ridiculous. Like most of you, I was indoctrinated with religion. At a time when I was much too young to make decisions. Tracked by the hand without permission, lacked the cognitive ability to see the contradictions and the superstitions. I know my mother really thought that she was doing right, cause after all, this wasn't a war she was taught to fight. Buried under layers of prayers, emotional attachments, and every other program and attachment. A sense of common unity, involvement, no actual incentive to question all of the sermons from the pulpit. This is how they introduced the idea, family rooted in the fear of question validity. Just to hear, it's not innocent, it sets a bad precedent. Internalized credulity for things that lack evidence. Some people keep this way of thinking for their whole lives. The need for critical thinking is never realized. I don't want to hear about the books that you have read. Explain to me the way you see the thoughts inside your head that filter through the garbage you regurgitate instead. The thoughts that are just a program of which you are in bed. All I really want to do is show you there is freedom. Eliminate those primitive myths, you don't need them. The clergy only troll them for power, so don't feed them. And since they can't prove it, remove it and don't believe them. Part of the logic of learning science from shamans. Excuse the left if you please, I'm trying to keep it all in. This is how you look.
I like that.
Consult your preachers to gain an understanding of evolutionary features. In fact, I find it despicable how you characterize scientific principles. Dismiss the indispensable. So don't believe these guys that say it's science they despise when they standing in the line for the iPhone 5. You benefit. That song is dated. Go and step on it. The fame of everything that your life has been affected with. A lifespan enhancement comes directly from advancement by people in lab coats, not biblical and jazz. Tickle with these comedians, cause something smells funky. If we came from monkeys, then why there's still monkeys? See, that's the type of dumb shit that needs to be responded to. Your obvious accomplishment was dropping out of high school. I don't want to hear about the books that you have read. Explain to me the way you see thoughts inside your head. Filter to the garbage you regurgitate instead. Your thoughts are just a program of which you are in bed. All I really want to do is show you there is freedom. Eliminate those primitive myths, you don't need them. The clergy only troll them for power, so don't feed them. And since they can't prove it, remove it, and don't believe them. You're not mentally fit to put shit to me. You believe those primitive books that reflect history in its purest form, like it really has no discrepancy. You want to go to war and you choosing this as your weaponry. Now, does that even sound at all? Is this even logical when you're claiming that a book of faith can prove your stupid argument? Way too much to problem with. Not much fat to stake it on. It's just like thinking if you dance, you can really make it storm. Oh yeah, but I forgot her book is the truthful one, and all those other ancient myths are something that is really dumb. It couldn't possibly be that you all have been deceived. It couldn't possibly be that you got a false belief. That's why I question the sermon should be sequestered. The leaf from off my porch is starting to really pester. You're one of many thousands that's claiming a revelation too wrapped up in all your ego to see your indoctrination. I don't want to hear about the books that you have read. Explain to me the way you see the thoughts inside your head. That filter through the garbage you regurgitate instead. Your thoughts are just a program of which you are in bed. All I really want to do is show you there is freedom. Eliminate those primitive myths you don't need them. The clergy only troll them for power, so don't do it. Since they're rid of remove it and don't believe them. I definitely have some thoughts.
Yeah.
So
you had a lot to say there.
Yeah, I did. The funny thing about that song, little known fact, when I first wrote that song, another hip hop artist, a friend of mine, said to me, I don't know, man. I don't think that's gonna work. I said, why is that? He said, well, it doesn't have the same type of energy that people are used to hearing from you. I said, no, I think that's why it's going to work. Because it sits out from all the other stuff that I've done sonically. I don't know, man. Years later, my most downloaded, most purchased single, all of that is Ballad of the Non-Believer. So I say that
it's like
to say, for other artists, yo, go with your first mind, man. If you think that that's going to work, put it out there. The other thing that comes to my mind is how much I absolutely hate the sound quality. But that's because I'm a much better engineer now and all of that. This song got me into places that I probably wouldn't have been able to get into without it. I've been on television because of this song. I've had mad interviews because I got to meet people because of this song. I did not know at the time, of course, when I was writing it, that it would be the biggest song that I have as far as engagement, views, all of that. But
right.
I'll share something with you on this show. I've only really talked about this with my other my circle of artists that I might work with from here now and then.
Okay.
Because of the fact that this is my first album. Even though I did music all those years, I never put the album together. I just had like these individual songs and stuff. I cannot stand this first album. Not because of the stuff that I'm talking about. Because as an artist, I'm always moving forward.
I get that. Yeah.
To the next thing. And when I listen to this, while it's nostalgic, it brings about this nostalgia. It also shows me how much I didn't know back then, musically, trying to produce all this stuff myself. This is also something I didn't produce. And the other thing is, did you know that this is the only atheistic song on the album that it's on? Def Lives had all this other content about all this other stuff. That was the only, and I put it on there because I was trying to make sure that I could transition out where I just put out this first album. I put that out the same year I put out Rise of the Infidel. I just put out this first album, all atheists all the time, right? So the second one, I was trying to show the audience, I didn't just start rapping as an atheist. I've been doing this for a long time. I can talk about other stuff. I want to talk about other stuff, but I'm going to give you this song because this is a nice transition so that you will see, oh, this will invite them to the project and go, oh, okay, yeah, he does talk about other stuff. And that did work, but this is the only atheist song on that album, the only one.
One last thing I was curious about before I let you go, Tombstone. How did you get the name? What does the name Tombstone mean? Where did they come from?
It is a combination of things, right? So I was all right. I'm trying to. Should I do the personal one first or the other? Okay, I'll do the personal one first. Without going into a whole bunch of detail, there was a certain period of my life where something really screwed up happened, and it happened because of the way I was moving, the way I was thinking, the way I was operating, and as a result, this bad thing took place, and it had me think I can't be that guy anymore. I can't be that guy anymore because that guy caused this. So it represented me killing off that guy, Tombstone Da Deadman. The name itself, I was looking for a dark name like that. So I utilized, of course, The Undertaker was one of my favorite characters. And it just so happens he does the whole I'm dead thing, right? He does the whole I'm dead thing. And then one of my favorite movies was The Crow, which is also deals with some guy that gets killed. He comes back and exacts revenge, right? So all those things kind of fit together. And I went with Tombstone Da Deadman to represent that part.
Cool. Yeah, Tombstone, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate you
Thanks, man.
coming on. My first guest back, and it's been about a year almost.
Wow.
I was doing this, and
really back getting
finally back at it. Yeah, getting back at it. But yeah, again, it was awesome having you on. And if you're putting out new music yourself, you said?
Yeah, also? I actually have see, the last project I did was a collaboration project with the company I started called it Multi-World Entertainment called Insurrection Day. They can find that on anywhere you stream music or whatever. You can find it there, and also check out Majestic Comics Patreon. It's a comic book put together by myself, Graydon Square, and Joseph Arnold. It's pretty dope. Great artwork, great story. You want to know more about it? Just search up Majestic Comics, and you'll find it.
Foresight paradigm, fine. A foresight paradigm. Foresight paradigm, you fine. A foresight paradigm. I fight for sight.